going to impact the next business cycle for the city. Our current business plan runs to the end of 14. The next one will run from 2014 to 2018. It's a 4-year business plan, this one. What comes out of this will feed very much into that business plan for 14 to 18. So what's underway? We're already reviewing options to increase Glenmore Reservoir storage. We've hired a consultant to look at the Sunnyside situation, to do a community drainage improvement study on that. And we're also looking at the impact of the berm at 4th Street. Now what that one is that as part of our emergency management plan, there is areas within the city that we know are prone to overbank flooding. So when the emergency situation kicks in, we send our crews out and they build berms, or we have some inflatable berms. 4th Street near the Safeway there, just off Felbow Drive, there's a berm that is built there. So we've had some concerns by the community in terms of what impact that had on flood levels. So we are looking into that at the moment. This is my last slide. This to me is about resiliency. The one on the left is a photo that I took 5 years ago, and it's up street. It's on the Elbow. It's part of Little Elbow Park. If you do the hike up from where the parking lot is, there's a trail that goes up quite high, and I look down, and as a little bit of an amateur photographer, I was very intrigued about the S that was in the river here. You know, aesthetically that was pleasing. So I was real curious as to what had happened in the flood. So my wife and I went out last Saturday, and I don't know if anybody's been out there, but if you remember Allenville Pond, it is no more. If you look at Elbow Falls, where you looked at it and the river was straight ahead, it is no more. It's over to the left, and you can see here that instead of the nice S that was in this, we now have, it goes around this corner. This has all been filled in. The reason I bring that up is that the river systems, they have a knack of being resilient themselves. They will go where they will go. They will form new channels. But what was interesting when we were on the hike is in the silts that were laid down, how much growth had come back up. So out of tragedy comes growth. And I think that's the message that I personally take to heart, is that out of this tragedy, as bad as it was, we need to look at things from a different perspective as we go forward. And that's what the flood mitigation program is about, is really taking a step back and seeing if there are different ways that we need to do things, both as a municipality. Is there different things that we need to do with the province? Is there different things we need to do from a watershed basis? Because one of the things that comes out of the changing climate piece is that we have to elevate ourselves to watershed, and even the influence of multiple watersheds on the eastern slopes, because the weather systems that we've been getting are more on just not for the Bow and the Elbow basins. They're north and south of us in the Old Man Basin, and north of us in the Red Deer Basin. So we have to look at things much more regionally than we perhaps have in the past. And on that, I will open for questions.
Half an hour.
Was that? Sorry.
Half an hour.
Sorry.
But it was quite clear that the line of reasoning couldn't be cut off and shouldn't be.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody any questions at this point? Yes?
Yeah, on the charts that you show the flow rates on, what was the time period for those, for the peak in the water and where it was quasi back to normal? Was that 10 days or 15 days or a month?
No, it wasn't. Definitely wasn't a month. I'm trying to think on the Elbow. I'd have to be honest. I have to go back to the slide. I can answer that question by going to the slide.
Ballpark?
It was a couple of weeks, really. You know, TransAlta, they had some issues up in the system. Some of theirs got damaged, so it had to be let through gradually. Another thing from a bank stability perspective, you don't want to be letting it down too quickly or they'll fail. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing that I am following since the flood started, that everybody's talking, we're going to have to do this and we're going to have to do that. But in fact, there is University of Saskatchewan Hydrology Department directed by Dr. Pomeroy, who lives in Kenmore. And nobody knows about it, but they were doing weather and climate studies for last decade in Kananaskis. And he produced completely whole suggestion what Alberta should be doing. What we don't do because for some reason in Alberta we don't think of the future. We're thinking only of the past. And it's all it takes. Contact the University of Saskatchewan, ask Dr. Pomeroy, find him in Kenmore, and he was monitoring this flood completely. And one thing which he actually said, approximately this way, there is no monitoring of flood flow in the creeks and rivers in Alberta, especially Kenmore is not protected. All these creeks, there is 5 creeks which flood the Kenmore, and there is no monitoring in those creeks. So Kenmore was lost. Kenmore was flooded because there was no monitoring. Same thing with climate and weather monitoring across the Kananaskis, and we have to talk to the Crossness Pass and almost up to the Rocky Mountain House. Okay? This has to be monitored. Okay, and from there we have to develop the study which will tell us when is the danger. We have to monitor how much snow we have in the mountains. And we used to do that. In fact, in the 70s and early 80s, there was set up in through whole Kananaskis. They were taking measurements of the snow, they were taking climate measurements, they were taking weather, and monitoring everything completely. But then there came government cuts, and that was all cancelled. And what happened right now was the situation that we have nobody there. We are 4 months almost after the flood, and what is happening? We have nobody in the mountains monitoring. If it happens right now, if there's going to be snowfall, Chinook, and rain, we're going to get flooded and we're not going to get warning. We got this warning, which we got at 8:45, was 12 hours late. You know why it was 12 hours late? Because in Kenmore, they were digging dikes at supper time night before this 8:45. People in High River, they were ending up on the roads because Alberta government completely failed to protect the people in these flood areas. And this has to change, and has to change now. Okay, I'm running for the mayor of Calgary, and this is one of my bills, because Calgary is not protected whatsoever.
Is this a question or an election?
No, this is a question that you should go after these people, because you haven't done it.
What I can tell you is that we work with the province ahead of events. So the province works looking at the weather systems. They have their models that predicts what the flows are going to be. So we're actively working before these events do come, both with the province and with TransAlta, so that we can be prepared, so that we can operate our systems to reduce the risk.
You're completely missing a study. Okay, study has been done there, especially Kananaskis, and you ignore that. You study, we're going to do this meeting and this committee and everything else. Why don't you go after the people? And that's my question. Which actually working on? Which monitor?
We have 7 minutes to ask a single question. The lady here who has a question, which I hope is brief. And,
Oh, you don't know me. 2 things. One, I think everybody really needs to be aware that inches made a difference. I know you presented that the Glenmore Reservoir was not designed to hold water, and you are looking at it.
It was not designed as a storage,
As a
flood
storage, right.
storage
Right.
reservoir,
So
yes.
the big question that a lot of people have is the dredging, why it's not being dredged.
Yeah.
Because inches, 1 inch to a whole bunch of people in the city would have saved them and the provinces and the city and the federal government money. And the other thing is, I hate to say this to you, but you said you knew for a few days. I live in Roxborough, and across the river was the berm. Now, there was equipment there at 8 o'clock in the morning to put that berm up. But at 20 to 3 in the afternoon, the message came on the radio to say, and this is what it said, after 3 o'clock, nobody's going to be allowed into Roxborough. And I only got it by happenstance. I was out somewhere else and beetled home. So we had no time to move anything. And again, in 2005, I didn't have a drop in my basement. This year I had 7 feet 7 inches, and we're doing a happy dance because we only had 7 feet 7 inches. It didn't hit the joist. So the whole background on this is, and it's more to that gentleman's point as well, is if you knew a couple of days in advance, how come we didn't get any warning till
So,
2:30 in the afternoon? The communication, whether it's a city or a province or whoever's it is, drop the ball on that one.
So when I say that I'm not sure that I said we knew. If I said that, then that's what I said. But what I would say is that when we know when the weather system is coming in, we work with the province to get as much notice as we can. This event was much more peaky, short-lived than we had information on. So the response time was a lot shorter for us than we would have liked. So
I could argue that one. You sort of correct, but I would argue that one with you, but I won't waste the time.
Okay, maybe we can have an offline discussion on that. Relative to the first question, the storage, the sediment, we're getting underway another survey of the reservoir. We did one last year. What you need to remember is there's two parts to the reservoir. There's the active storage and there's what we call dead storage, which the dead storage is below the level at which we are able to draw the reservoir down to before it starts to affect our ability to withdraw into the Glenmore water treatment plant. But also it starts to pick up that really turbid water to draw into the water treatment plant. So the dredging, if it was going to be a benefit, would need to be in that portion above the dead storage level, so in that live storage area. We are going to look at it to see if it would give us any benefit. I can't say right now whether it would be a benefit. From a flood protection perspective, what we are looking at is how can we increase that flood storage volume so it will give us more volume when these events come in. But we are looking at that, so thanks.
I've got a question, if I might. The mills of God grind slow. The mills of government tend to be at least as slow. You talk about the study groups and so on reporting next June. Or will there be no shovels in the ground before then?
There are some things that are part of recovery that is going on right now.
So,
there are some things that are much more longer term, like what's the impact
no,
of
I
climate
understand.
change.
If you're going to build a new something.
If there are infrastructure needs that we need, if we need to do some more berming or different berming, that type of thing, they are being looked at right now. After every event, we revisit what our emergency plan tells us to do to see if there's any more information so we can improve it. But if we are doing some temporary measures, there will be other measures that will be put in where we can quickly, but some of the other stuff will take a little bit longer.